And I'm very happy to be welcoming you here to our second annual Women's Health Research Symposium. Last year, I sat in the audience during the first annual symposium, and I remember watching and listening with awe at the incredible breadth and depth of women's health research taking place in our province. And now, as I stand here as the leader of the Women's Health Research Institute, my awe is compounded with a strong sense of pride that the women's health research taking place in BC is driving change in how we think about, classify, manage, and improve women's health nationally and internationally. In my role, I've had the immense pleasure of meeting so many researchers from across the province of BC who are engaged in women and newborn health research, and I can state with confidence that you are setting the agenda for women's health by the very work that you do. This, of course, poses a challenge when trying to construct a program such as today, where we have so few slots. However, this year we were inspired by a few major themes. A few months ago, our community faced the tragic news of a young mother with a newborn who took her own life due to the throes of postpartum depression. This tragedy reinvigorated the conversation about how to identify depression in women and intervene quickly to provide women the support that they need. Women suffer depression and other mental health difficulties at disproportionately higher rates, and social determinants affect mental health more in women than in men. When it comes to treatment, existing interventions inadequately consider the important role of sex and gender. Moreover, addiction, mental health, trauma, and violence often interact in unique ways in women and girls, and yet available treatments fail to address these gender-based interactions. Importantly, as Kofi Annan articulates, when women thrive, all of society benefits, and succeeding generations are given a better start in life. Yet there is much work for us to do. Our keynote, Dr. Jodi, an international expert in emotional well-being, will focus on this during her talk, and with a session focused on new research findings in women's mental health. A second major theme of this year's symposium is knowledge translation. We still face the dreaded second valley of death, a term coined by CIHR to depict the situation where there's an average 17-year gap between translating science into practice or policy change. And so many of our research findings never quite cross that valley and remain instead buried deep in a scientific journal. Knowledge translation has been identified as vital to addressing and closing the knowledge to action gap, and that's something that we at the WHRI have renewed our commitment to doing much more of. One popular form of knowledge translation involves social media, and we're thrilled to have social media celebrity Erica M. share her story with us today. On that note, you'll notice on your tables the information about live tweeting. So we encourage you to use our hashtag WHRISIM17 and tag us, Women's Research, during the talks. And at this point, I would like to introduce Ms. Valerie Nicholson, a close friend of the Oak Tree Clinic at BC Women's Hospital, a longtime advocate for women's health, and a recently named Indigenous Elder to acknowledge the ancestral lands that we are on.
Thank you. Good morning. Valerie is my GST name. My actual name is the one the eagles watch over. I do not know my own language, as it was taken away through our family through residential school. So before I acknowledge the territories that I'm standing on, I have to acknowledge who I am. That is our ways. So my name is the one that eagles watch over, and Nodi Wenda, which means wolf eyes. I am Mi'kmaq on my dad's side, and I'm from Haida Gwa on my grandmother's side. And I bring my ancestors with me. And when we came to a territory that wasn't ours, we raised up our hands to show that our hearts were in a good way and that we carried no weapons. So this is our welcome to the territories. And I acknowledge that we are standing on the territories of the ancestral, traditional, unceded territories of the Coast Salish people and the Musqueam peoples that live on these lands here today. And I'd just like to give you one teaching for the welcome here today, and that is to recognize one of our strongest medicines for a woman, which is water. We all came from water. We were all in water for 9 to 10 months. If there was not water on this land, we would not be here. Water is so strong that it can take a rock and turn it to sand. Yet it's so gentle that we can drink it, we're nourished, and we grow from it. So the next time that you take a sip of water, that water has the memories from the very beginning of our Mother Earth, and it carries with those memories. So when you take a sip of water, acknowledge it, thank it, because if it wasn't for that water, we would not be standing here on Mother Earth. And when you acknowledge that water, you will actually feel the water as it goes down. And we use this as a cleanser, as a smudge. And the next time that you cry, replenish that water. And you'll notice in our teachings that if you cry and you're sad, that water will be salty. And if you're crying out of happiness, that water will be sweet. So today, as we're all teachers and we're all learners here today, I welcome you to these territories of the Coast Salish people, and that we do our work in a good way. I honor each and every one of you here today. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to call up Dr. Gavin Stuart to make a few remarks. Dr. Gavin Stuart is a professor in the UBC Department of OBGYN, a gynecologic oncologist, and a tried and true staunch supporter of women's health research.
Thanks, Laurie. According to the agenda, I think I'm finished, so maybe just a couple of things. So first and foremost, thanks very much, Laurie, and congratulations on the second annual Women's Health Research Symposia. It's actually wonderful just to see how the crowd is growing and the interest, and I think that's a testament to what WHRI has been able to do in its history. Couple of comments really as to why are we here and why are we focusing on women's health in this research symposia. I am going to tie back to some of the popular media. The New York Times recently had an editorial by a young woman that was actually talking about how gender bias and sex as a biological variant is just overlooked in our systematic thinking, and that needs to change. What she was talking about was a study that came out of Johns Hopkins that was looking at their trauma service. So this is a trauma surgeon that led this study, trying to find out why so many of their trauma patients died of DVT or pulmonary embolus postoperatively, and a lot of that was related to the fact that they did not receive anticoagulation as part of their, or prophylactic anticoagulation as part of their care when they came in the door. And as he went through their data at a large trauma center in Baltimore, what they found out is that women were 50% less likely to receive anticoagulants at the time of their trauma than were males. And that correlated directly with their death rate. And they tried to actually understand why that took place. They couldn't come up with the reason. What they did invoke is a checklist that followed in Atul Gawande's work with his manifesto and other documentation. But her entire point was that in healthcare, gender disparities are particularly pernicious. They're not something that you can just see. There are a lot of examples that we know about, and we keep defining the problem, but we haven't done anything about it. New England Journal showed that women with acute myocardial infarction are less likely to receive aggressive interventions. Even Canadian Medical Association journal showed that critically ill women admitted to, who were over the age of 50, admitted to intensive care units, were less likely to receive critical care interventions during the course of their stay in the intensive care unit in Canada. Recently, another article showing how emergency medical technicians responding with paramedics were less likely to initiate CPR on women than they were on men, and trying to understand that. But this is sort of repetitive. It's defining the problem. So what are we doing about it? Things have improved. We now know that we're getting close to 50% of persons registered in clinical trials through the NIH are women. We're not there yet, but it has improved. The NIH does have their Office of Research on Women's Health, led by Janine Clayton, and that has started to have an impact on the clinical research scene in the U.S. There's certainly now a defined requirement for all researchers to account for sex as a biological variant in studies involving vertebrate animals and humans. but it still hasn't taken us to where we are. And I sort of muse as we look at the era of precision medicine. I might submit that we haven't actually got the biological medicine figured out yet. Here we are looking at molecular differentiation and precision medicine with novel therapeutics, yet we have right before us sex as a biological variant that we still haven't been able to address effectively as we go forward. So I think we're getting there, but it's a symposia such as this that I think does allow us to make a meaningful set of steps in the right direction so that we are making progress and that this does become a key element of the research that takes place throughout our academic environment. Lori, thank you, and I look forward to the speakers today.
We'll turn it over to our... just wanted to remind you of your evaluation forms. The evaluation forms are really important for us in planning future symposia, so please fill those in and turn them in before the end of the day for your chance to win a draw for a beautiful basket that was donated by the BC Women's Hospital Foundation. Would also like as well as BC Women's Hospital, as well as the Provincial Health Services Authority for their sponsorship of the meeting. And thank you to the Michael Smith Foundation for Health Research for awarding us with a grant to partially support this meeting. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Dr. Gina Ogilvie, Assistant Director of the WHRI, and stranger to no one in this room, to introduce our opening keynote speaker.
Good morning. It's really wonderful